Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Collective. We have another fantastic show for you planned out today. Very excited. We got Matt returning us, and we got two new faces, both Rich and Shaun. Can't wait to get you guys into this conversation. Now, before I do that, though, everybody at home should be liking the show, subscribing to the channel, hitting the notification bell, doing all that good stuff to get your emails in the morning, of course, whenever we go live, or the afternoon, that is today. If you have any thoughts, questions, comments, anything at all, by all means, put them up in the comment section, kind of like this one, so we can engage it directly. Good day, all. Hope everyone got enough sleep after last night's late showing. Good to see y'all. Very excited. So today we're going to be carrying on our conversation on belief. Now, yesterday we had Steve and Sarah, and we had a great conversation. We got into all kinds of things, and then we finished off on soup, which I think is fantastic. So let's get some intros real quick here before we dive into the conversation or dive into said soup, and we'll go from there. So Shaun, I'm going to start with you, and then we'll give her. So 10, 15 seconds. Who are you? Where you come from? All that good stuff. Give her.
Oh, yeah, I'm a realtor by trade, big into hunting and fishing in the outdoors. I've had a storied past, I guess, in the long run. I was a professional MMA fighter before that, ran a couple other businesses, failed a whole bunch, and finally was lucky enough to do well in one. And yeah, now we have a business that we're lucky that does about $3 billion a year in sales. So it's been pretty cool.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
Rich, how about yourself? 10, 15 seconds. What do you got?
My name's Rich Pierce. I'm the BC manager for the Veteran Hunters, which is a not-for-profit that manages and helps veterans of military, police, fire, and first responders with PTSD. And we do that by getting them out in the woods and getting them talking. So I also did 23 years in the Navy.
22 years in the Navy. The beard says it all. That is a Navy beard. Matt, how about yourself? I know you're here all the time, but we're going to hit you again.
Yeah, no worries. 25-year veteran on the armed forces as a combat engineer. Chance knows me because we worked together. Transitioned into being a chef, meat cutter, and health and life coach on the side, helping other people and trying to make this planet a little bit beautiful one day at a time.
Bam. I like it. So, belief. This is what we were talking about yesterday. We're going to carry on the conversation. Yesterday, I used a kind of an interesting definition as to what belief is, and I have another little extension onto that. So at the end of what I was talking about yesterday, I said your beliefs will dictate your action. If you believe in a cause, you'll fight for it. If you believe in your religion, you'll live it. If you believe in others, you support and uplift them. Beliefs drive us. They are the root of all purpose and all action. Now, this is where I kind of want to take this on the first little step here. Unfortunately, while beliefs can be very empowering, they can be equally disempowering. Many times our beliefs are negative or pessimistic about a person, situation, even ourselves, and they limit us and sabotage our results. It is important to stop and take time to analyze your beliefs. Are they helping or hindering? Do they move you forward or hold you back? And so I'm going to start with Matt on this one, and I'm going to ask you this question: what beliefs sustain you? Which ones move you forward versus back? Let's start with that.
I guess the belief that moves me forward is that there's a plan for me somewhere. Like somebody has this plan. Call it God, call it the universe, call it the ether, whatever. But there's a path that I'm supposed to be on, and I slowly move towards it one day at a time. Part of the hindering part of that, I guess, would be the fact that I'm waiting for the path to be illuminated in front of me, right? I do take actions on my own. I do kind of move where I have to be. But I mean, sometimes there's always that thing in the back of the head where it's like, oh, no, you're on the right path. You'll be there. You'll get there. You'll get there, right? And if I rely on that voice, not seeking it out myself, that will hinder me as well.
That's an interesting start. Shaun, what about yourself?
Yeah, it's funny that you brought this up because after listening to yesterday's podcast, this is one of the things I was going to talk about, because I feel like, unfortunately, most of us get trapped in the negative portion of our beliefs and what we believe versus using it towards the positive, which you guys were really highlighting super well yesterday. So I think it's also important to note, like, you guys talked about the definition between like belief and believe. And everybody's going to have a separate definition. For myself, belief, and I think somebody commented on this yesterday, is more like faith. It's more like not 100% knowing what's going to be happening in the future. It's not something that it's shown to you, right? Whereas believing is almost to know. And I think Shaun said something really cool yesterday about, I think if I remember right, it was Seb that reached out to him, and he just basically automatically signed him up for whatever they were doing because they're such good friends and have known each other for so long that they automatically believed he knew 100% that he was on and he was in. And I think that's to do with the fact that there's this track record before of being able to count on somebody to be there and so on and so forth. So when it comes to belief and believing in ourselves and these different types, like the positives usually come from, and where we truly believe in ourselves is when we've done things. So our belief may be, I want to make $1 million. I'm just talking nonsense, but I want to make $1 million, right? And that's my belief. I believe. But the more we do every single day, like I could believe I can do this today and I do it, that starts compounding. And eventually that belief becomes a belief. Like I believe that this is going to happen because there's no reason it won't, right? Because I've done all of these things along the line. So I think that's important to know. But on the contrary, and it's a saying that has been said, many, many times, is like, you are what you believe. And there's so many different versions of that I feel like too many times we believe the world hasn't given us what we should have. We believe that we aren't capable of doing something. We believe that, I didn't grow up rich, so how could I be rich? We believe that, whatever it is, and then that compounds as well. So whatever you believe you're going to be, positive or negative, you're probably right. And I think that's one of the main differences that I find when it comes to that belief mechanism, both positive and negative.
Absolutely. I think it was Henry Ford that said, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. I think that's exactly where you're going with that. Rich, how about yourself? What are you thinking on this?
No, that's a really good point. Because the belief is something that you usually intrinsically hold, close to your core beliefs of, good, bad, evil, love, all of these things. But you can get down that rabbit hole of, if you start thinking negative things, you start experiencing negative things, and then that becomes your new belief. That thing of, no matter what I do, no matter how hard I work, it's going to be a negative outcome. And sometimes you need a friend, like, sometimes Seb steps up for Shaun, or we step up for other people, and we say, hey, it looks like you're having a rough spot. What do you believe in? Like, where do you want to go with this? And sometimes it takes someone else to say, you just need to sort of have a check and say, is this actually what you believe in? This is what you're demonstrating. This is what you're living. This is now your belief. But maybe that's actually not what you want. You want to make it a positive thing and say, well, actually, I believe that I really can do anything. It's just I'm not experiencing that right now. I'm not seeing that right now. So it's faltered my belief. And sometimes it takes that other person to get you back on that track of remembering what you believe in so you can actually start experiencing it.
That's a great point. We were talking about, those little guardrail conversations sometimes that you need. Absolutely. Mr. Taylor, let's go with that. Would you like to add a little snippet before we continue this?
I'll see how Japan treats me. What you believe is what you get. Your beliefs will help you form what you're supposed to get.
Bam. Succinct as ever. I love it. Now, this goes into what I want to, something that kind of clicked in my head is that there's this seeking good things in bad situations, right? It's trying to see the silver lining on a dark cloud. Or, we were talking about hunting stories about how sometimes you have to go through horrible, horrible conditions to see the good side of it after the fact. So now there's this, if we're talking about what you believe you can see, and what you see you can believe, let's discuss this a little bit and try to figure out, how do we actually believe when we're seeing horrible things? How do we maintain those beliefs, those core things that are true to us in negative, bad's not a great word, but negative situations? Shaun, I'm going to start with you. What do you think?
Yeah, so to be candid, this year particularly has been one of my best years and absolute worst years, the highs and the lows I've ever been through. And there's certain times, and I think one of the things, Chance, that you were mentioning there is our belief or what we believe in ourselves sometimes can drastically change by one action. And that action might not truly be who we are or who we define ourselves are. It's just a mistake, not trying to make right mistakes we've done, because everybody does them and they're wrong and right things. But for myself, I feel like having a good support system, as Rich was mentioning, having that person to reach out to and kind of give you a reality check. Because if you believed you were a good person, you do something you regret, now you believe you're an evil person, really one thing, one action doesn't define who you are in your life, right? So having somebody else to bring back the positives and bring you back onto line, I think is incredibly important. That's the first thing. And then the other thing too is to understand, and this is just something that I personally went through, is to really take a step back and really go in on oneself and not just look at like social media, not try to find every single guru that you possibly can, not all those things. But there's a book that I read, The Untethered Soul, that one of my friends recommended to me. And it talks about having the roommate mind. You know, it's our talk within our heads is incredibly powerful. And sometimes, like, you know, one of the things that it says as an example, if we were to walk down the street and you see somebody talking out loud to themselves, we automatically think they're nuts, right? Yet at the same time, all of us have conversations in our head. All of you guys, what I'm talking right now, you're all having a conversation with your head right now. And at the same time, sometimes there's multiple sides of you talking about in your head what you're thinking. So understanding that a lot of that is not just us, it's just a subconscious and us trying to, you know, defend ourselves, that, you know, fight or flight and all those other things that are in place, has really helped me understand that, okay, you know, just because people make mistakes, people do things that they regret wholeheartedly or whatever the situation is, it doesn't necessarily have to change your belief in where you're going to go and who you believe you are. And unfortunately, that does change time to time, and our belief structures and everything change time to time. But yeah, it's a difficult thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Rich, thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think we're all kind of touching on it. Is that belief is one of those things that your reality can redefine it. So whatever you're experiencing tends to lead you in the direction of your future beliefs, and it can sort of contaminate your goal sometimes. So if you can't find a way to remind yourself what you really do believe in, because you're getting distracted by all these things of life and stress and, you know, other people interfering with what you're doing, you need a way to sort of, I don't know, it's like maybe a trigger to catch yourself and say, hold on, I'm going down this path that I don't actually believe in, but I've started putting things in place that are making it my current belief. How do you pull yourself back from that and go, no, sort of reset? This is my goal. This is my belief of how I'm going to accomplish that goal, and then sort of start again. And sometimes we have to be able to do that. We realize that we're going down the wrong path and that it's interfering with our belief. And sometimes you're able to do it by yourself, and sometimes you need, you know, a buddy check to someone remind you of, you know, hey, are you on the right path? Are you doing the right thing? Is this what you believe in? Because it's not who we know you to be.
That is a great point. I've thought on that. I'm going to wait for a second, though. Matt, you got anything on this? What are you thinking?
No, I totally in concurrence with what everyone's saying. One of my beliefs, I guess, is that perception alters your belief, and your belief alters your reality. Right? As an engineer, I think as a math equation. So if I change my perception of things, good, bad, evil, negative, right? That's going to change my belief, and then with that belief change, that allows me to influence my reality around me, how I'm going forward on things. Right? Something as simple as, you know, I'm overweight, right? That's my perception. My belief is that I need to do something about it. And my reality is that I'm going to start doing something, changing diet, exercise, start moving, whatever, right? But I think everyone's on the same boat on this one. It's perception, belief, reality.
Could not agree more with that. Shaun, you got any quick statements? Mr. Taylor, I should say. Let's see if he's with us.
Well, I think if your question
Dang. I think you might be a bit too janky. Mr. Taylor,
was how do we retain our
yeah, we'll have to come back to you. Unfortunately, your connection's not great, so we're gonna continue on here. The here's the follow on to this, and I'm really I'm gonna go back to the soup metaphor that we went down. And Matt's a chef, so he knows what he's talking about when it comes to this. How many spices do you have to add to a soup before it's untenable? Right there, because there's a point where if you know, you make a bad decision, you put a little bit too much pepper in. Okay, you can kind of meld that out. You can kind of,
Yeah.
with the rest of your actions, you can kind of develop that. But if somebody walks past and dumps the entire thing of salt in there, or makes a really bad decision and I don't know, throws something in there that is not supposed to be there, I think that can affect the soup. And so the question is like, at what point do you recognize that you got to dump that thing? You got to take your beliefs, your whole little rigmarole that you've developed over your life, and go and start fresh. Matt, I'm going to start with you. What do you think?
Well, speaking as a chef, no, I like where you're going with this, but I don't think it's about dumping the entire pot. Like with your analogy with someone adds too much salt into it. There's ways you can fix that. You throw a potato in there for an hour or two, it absorbs some of the salt, you pull the potato out, and now it's non-salty soup, right? Your soup can be turned into a broth. You can add more water to it, thin it right down, strain out all the solids. Now you've got, nice broth that you can start a new soup with, right? Or you go even as crazy as say, let's make a consomme and really reduce that thing, right? But I think throwing the pot out, that's an extreme. That's like a total shift in your belief, total shift in everything that's your foundation. I think you should build on it. You should either reduce it, thicken it, or balance it out in some way so that your beliefs are affecting your reality the way you want it to, not necessarily what the pot is doing in front of you.
I'm glad you brought that up. Rich, let's come back to you. What are you thinking?
Well, I see his point, and sometimes I think if you correct yourself soon enough, I think that's definitely something you can do. Is you can rectify that soup and you can bring it back online and make sure it's palatable again. But I think sometimes we get, especially if you're having issues where you're under a lot of stress and you're tired and you're experiencing anger and you're sad, that sometimes you get down and that soup is no longer something that you can fix. It's something you can't necessarily use again, and sometimes it's something you may not even want to use again because it's so far away from what you believed you were doing that you don't recognize it. So I think sometimes you have to know when to sort of cut bait and say, I'm way off track here. I'm so off track that nothing I can do to rectify this is going to fix the situation. And you just sort of need to go back to what your initial belief was and start from scratch. And yeah, that's hard and it sucks and it takes a lot of time and effort and there's a lot of fear involved with doing that. Taking everything you've worked towards for your whole life and toss it all out to start again new. But sometimes you need that. You need to start again new and remind yourself why you're there and what you're doing.
That's a great point. Shaun, what are you thinking? You're muted there, bud.
Sorry, I pressed the wrong button. Yeah, so I think mine would be kind of a combination of those two, and I agree wholeheartedly. I think you have to go back, and I think Shaun mentioned this yesterday, or a lot of you guys talked about like the why, your purpose, and really circling back to that, because I think a lot of it comes from if back to the soup theory. If we're creating a soup, but we were given the base from our parents, we were given the base from situations growing up as a kid that we had no control over. We were given the base and all these different sorts of things. We have to ask ourselves, I'm like, okay, we're trying our best. Things are still failing miserably in our eyes or whatever the scenario is. Why is that? And I think every time I've ever gone through a challenge, self-reflection and really using that question, why, like you have your internal why, what drives you, what is your purpose in life? But then also the why of like, why is it that I continue to do this when I don't want to do this? This doesn't feel like who I am. Why is it that I'm doing this? And really understanding that, okay, so a lot of the things that I am, I've just been programmed this way growing up. You know, like in the world of business, in the world of everything, like a lot of people are programmed anti-money and anti-whatever because their parents thought a certain way about, you know, those who are rich are evil or whatever, you know, and these things go down generationally. And so when you're trying to now create wealth, or you're trying to create something, I'm just using this as an example, but whatever it may be, you still have these things in the back of your head that have been programmed. So I feel like sometimes you need to throw all of that out to understand, because at the end of the day, your true why of what you want to do, why you want to be successful, why you want to create this, you know, the people you want to help, whatever that may be that actually is that purpose or drives you, is being detrimented by other people's philosophies that were programmed into you over the years. So I think portion of that you can dump, whereas at the same time, like obviously a lot of those things that you learned from your family or whatever it may be would be positives, and that's part that you would keep in the soup, for lack of a better word.
That's really interesting. Matt, I'm going to come back to you. What are you thinking?
No, I like that. I like where everyone's, and by me saying fix it, I'm not saying like don't end up dumping it if it's the entire thing's destroyed. But I do believe I believe it's a harder work and more rewarding to fix your path than it is to restart it altogether. I think you deserve it to yourself, deserve it to your past experiences and your past life to actually readjust your curve versus just throwing it all away. I think there's so much value, and like what Shaun was saying, I mean, there's your family, you grew up with family influences, you got influence around that, all are positive, right? When I got out of the military, I was in so much spite of it that I was like, I don't want nothing to do with it. It took me years to get actually able to talk about my experience and actually look at it as a positive and use it for my future career, right? So that's an example of me throwing out the soup and then realizing, damn, well, I need the ingredients that were in the soup pot, right? I got to fix that. So now I'm rebuilding my past, I guess my soup pot, with the ingredients from what I threw out, and then also the new stuff I'm putting back in. I think it's a more, I don't want to say valor or anything like that, but I think it's throwing it out completely is an extreme, and I would only do that in extreme measures. And by extreme measures, I mean, let's take an example of somebody who has an addiction and their life is totally crushed and crumbled, right? They are they're out of control. They got no future happening. They got nothing planned. But then they take an entire look at themselves like, you know what? I need rehab, and I'm going to go in rehab, and I'm going to crush rehab. And they go in and crush it. That is a complete new soup. That's now you're making broth. I don't know what you're doing, right? But you are making your life better than what it was before. That's a complete dump, right? But I would say that a good portion of us would just need to add an ingredient or change the seasoning and spicing of your soup of life. There we go, soup of life, right? And to make it better into the path that you want it to be.
I love that. That's fantastic. Rich, you got any additional thoughts on this?
I'm just hooked on the fact that we ended up talking about soup again.
It's true.
But
Yeah,
it's guiding this conversation with belief, right?
100%.
It is a good metaphor to look at what your beliefs are, how you can take in positive things and negative things into your belief, and sometimes it makes it better, sometimes it makes it not so great, and being able to identify those things.
And I think recognizing the what actually is good versus bad, because if you don't know, like if what is normal to you is the blandest soup you can imagine, that's normal, then that's your normal. You don't actually know whether or not something tastes great or not until you actually try it, which is a whole other thing. Shaun, you got any thoughts on this one? Oh, that's Shaun.
I do. I'm gonna try. I'm not sure. Can you hear me? Okay. I'll kill my cam. So my thoughts are this: if someone's finding that things are a bit negative and they are losing their sense of belief, there was an old army saying, "It can always get worse. It can always be worse. No matter how bad it is, it can always be worse." And I think a lot of guys and girls lose sight of that. They were used to things being hard, and then they got soft, and they forgot how they managed to work through things when things were hard. And I just think it's a matter of context. If you're not regularly challenging yourself, if you're not regularly in and around adversity, then easy things become hard things.
That is a fantastic point. That is a fantastic point. Other Shaun, do you have any additional thoughts on this one?
Ditto. Does that work?
Ditto, I like it.
No, that was awesome. That's exactly my thoughts too. Hard things make you happy in the long run. I know you guys touched on that last time as well.
Absolutely. Now, I got a couple of comments here I just want to touch on. Steve jumped in here right at the beginning when we were talking about doing difficult things, and he's like, my whole November. So, not who we know you to be. That's a great line to talk about when you're talking to your friends. Angela jumps in here. She says, "Evening, everyone listening live for the first time. Good to see you, Angela. Loving the soup metaphor. Everything is perishable. Today's nourishing soup is next week's spoiled food." And that is a great line. And it's 100% in terms of we have to continually update. Otherwise, everything gets stale. And then here's the question. Steve jumped in here and he said, "Is starting over the same as letting go for growth?" And I really like this because when you think about it, this just popped into my head is that penicillin is made from mold, right? So there are times where the things need to spoil or things need to go bad in order to create something that will help later on. So let's talk about that. Rich, go for it.
I think a lot of the times things need to get really, really, really bad before you realize they're bad. Like you need to hit that rock bottom sometimes to realize everything I've been trying to do, every way I've tried to, we'll use the soup analogy again, to fix that soup, to make it palatable for everybody, is failing, and it's making it worse, and it's making it worse. Sometimes you have to be able to stop and go, okay, this is not going to work. The tack that I'm taking is not going to accomplish the goal. I need to pull back, regroup, look at what I want to do, and then figure out a new way to do it. And sometimes that means going to rehab, or that means ending a relationship and starting something new, or quitting your job and finding something that makes you happy, because you realize that no matter what you do to that soup to try and fix it, it's still the same soup, and it's not what you want.
That is a great point. Shaun Zed, let's go with you. What are you thinking on this?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So, in just my thoughts. So starting over versus letting go. So I think they can be a little bit different, or they can be the same thing. So starting over is not necessarily, I think, always the best thing to do. And the reason for that is what is the reason for starting over? Are you starting over because it's difficult and you no longer have the passion and drive or want to put those things into play? Or are you starting over because it's just something that's so toxic that you need to, and then really you are letting go of a portion of it? Do you need to start over just to let go of something that's toxic? So I think there's a lot of questions that I would be asking myself during that situation. Is starting over the same as letting go for growth? Yeah, I think in a lot of ways you need to change. If it depends on where you are and what you're trying to do and what the whole outcome is. But I think starting over doesn't necessarily mean it's the best thing to do, just because, as we were talking about earlier, you may be just giving up right before you hit that gold mine. But a lot of times we do have to let go of a lot of the insecurities and a lot of different things, negative people, toxicity that are in our lives to be able to have that growth. So it really depends on the situation in my eyes.
Absolutely. The standard collective answer depends. Matt, what are you thinking on this?
I think it depends. No, just kidding. I don't think it's the same. I think that letting go for growth can be individual portions. If we're going back to the soup analogy, that's individual ingredients, right? Just take this part out, take that part out, or put this part in, put that part in. I think starting all over is a total shift in your perspective, in your beliefs, right? But both of them can be valuable and both of them can be dangerous at the same time. I think that by starting over and just ignoring everything in the past, some of those might come back in. They might hit you again just because they've been in your life, they've been in your past, right? And you may hit that obstacle again without learning from when you originally did it, right? letting go of it and learning from it, I think that would avoid the trip falls coming forward in that regards to your new path and your new growth. It's an
Absolutely.
interesting kind of a double-edged sword kind of analogy here, where it's like, or question, um, because yeah, you can say it's the same, and you can say that it's not the same, and you still have a correct answer.
Yeah, 100%. Mr. Taylor, any thoughts on this? Let's see if his connection's holding out for this one.
Yeah, I will. I'll keep it brief. And so I think that we start over every 24-hour cycle. The moment that we wake up, we're starting over. And growth, well, that's for you to decide what growth means to you. If it's a growth mindset and you want to be 1% better every day, well, you start over every time you get out of bed. You retain a growth mindset. And the only thing that you should be letting go is the past. So now we could build that out over a 24-hour scale, to a 1 month scale, to a year scale, to a decade scale, to a lifetime scale. We could scale it up in all kinds of ways. But you wake up, you're starting over. You let go of the past. You retain a growth mindset. The rest takes care of itself.
Bam. I love it. These we're getting little knowledge bomb snippets from Shaun because he has to be has to take it small. I think this is great, and I think that's a great point there. Now I have another thought, another question for you guys, but any other thoughts on that before we shift into another gear? Yeah, Rich, what do you got?
I was just looking and sort of thinking about what everyone said about, is it different to start over, and is it the same as letting go? And I think it can be, like everyone's saying, it can be a little bit of this and a little bit of that. But I think if we look at sort of the meaning behind that is, like, starting over doesn't necessarily mean you're going to change what you're doing. You're just starting the task again, maybe, or you're starting, the journey again. But letting go and starting again, I think, implies that you've learned something from what you're doing, and maybe realized that what you were doing and the way you were doing it wasn't going to accomplish the goal. So you've taken that in and you've changed your mentality, changed your belief of how you think you're going to accomplish something, and then started again to really focus on that belief and get you to your end goal.
I really like that. Sean or Matt, any thoughts on that? No? Okay. So I think you're absolutely spot on that one. And the one of the things that we were talking about, not only before but after the show last night, was the fact that you know perceptions can drive belief. Right? We were just talking about the fact that what you see can change how you believe and all these things. And what I wanted to kind of touch on is, how we perceive other people is based around our own insecurities to begin with. And so I'm wondering what your guys' thoughts are in terms of, say, shifting your belief or changing it, or, all of a sudden you recognize, oh man, like, uh, it's, it's not them, it's me, it's not this thing, it's that thing. You now all of a sudden have to make a change, you have to make a shift, and that's going to affect your perception of how you see yourself. So where is the how do we adjust our beliefs without like shocking the system, let's say, without like jumping in an ice cold bath, that kind of like hit to the system where we need to completely change? How do we engage that earlier, let's say? Rich, let's start with you.
Well, that's a good question. How do we, sort of gently start ourselves down a new path without, like you said, jumping in that ice bath and shock to the system? I mean, definitely that shock to the system sometimes is needed, but I think if you can have, friends, support networks that say, hey, what's going on? Like, you're not being who you are normally. You're not accomplishing the things you said you were going to set out to accomplish. And it might be enough to sort of bring you back on task and make you understand that, the way you're going about it isn't very productive. And I think that's sort of that soft reset of saying, hey, oh, right, yeah, I got lost on this, and it's not what I want, and I'm going to try and modify it to get it to where I want it to be. But I think sometimes you need that big shock about, jumping in that ice bath and sort of resetting your system and saying, it's time to reset everything and start from scratch and build yourself back up. Look at your beliefs, go through them with a fine tooth comb and say, is this who I want to be? Is this what I want to accomplish? And then if that's actually what you want, then you need to pick a new action plan, talk to someone about it so that you're accountable for it, and then move forward and just make those notes for yourself to say, okay, someone keep me on track here. I'm going to check in, once a week or once a month or whatever it is, just to make sure that you're on that goal and that you're not losing track of what your beliefs are.
I like that. Matt, thoughts on this?
Yeah, I kind of agree that it's not just an individual thing. If you're going for a huge change in your life and a different path, you do need guidance. And this could be your friends, this can be a specialist, or this could be just you doing self-knowledge and improvement, right? Reading, going on classes, that kind of stuff, trying to grow yourself so that you are ready to go down this new path. I 100% agree that as well, people need people, right? And you have a better chance going down a new path if someone's there with you, either pathfinding it or guiding you, making sure you don't fall down the quicksand and all that good stuff. Yeah, I think teamwork in this regard to go down the new path and accountability and having a check-in is a valuable tool of trying to adjust your beliefs and your paths.
I like that. Shaun? Mr. Zuber, I should say.
So I'm the kind of guy that learns by mistakes a lot. So I would say I hit the ice bath more than I probably should, to be real. But I don't know. I can just tell you the challenges I've done over my life or I've been through, most of them have been self-inflicted and most of them turn out to be a positive over a negative over the long run. So I feel like it's important to ask those questions before you jump into an ice bath or change directions. Like, it's important to ask why am I doing this? Because a lot of times our beliefs or our old beliefs or what we believe in ourselves will hold us back from making that next step and that next jump, because we may be thinking, well, no, that's wrong, or this is whatever the scenario may be. So for myself, I'd like to walk things through in my head, ask those questions, ask that why. Is this really the way I want to go? Or am I stopping myself from going this route because of these limiting beliefs, because these are the things I should be? And I feel like this is against maybe whatever morals I had as a kid or whatever scenarios it was. But generally speaking, I think positivity and negativity come in momentum. So if you have friends and peers pushing you and helping you along the way, I feel that ice bath jump is actually a good thing in most cases, because you're starting down that path. You're no longer on that hesitation portion. Should I not? You're creating, like Shaun said, you're redoing and starting every single day. It's a brand new day. You're executing. So my personal opinion, I like the ice baths with some preemptive thought behind it.
I like that. Mr. Taylor, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think that perception is reality, and you get to decide your own reality unless you're not thinking about perception. And if you're not, then you become a victim to your reality.
I like that. Yeah. Again, these little mic drop moments, I think we might have to change the style of the show, switch out our belief system real quick, get these little Shaun mic drops. It's awesome. So the reason I brought this up is that, sacrificing, we talked about this the other day, was that, a lot of people don't see sacrifices in, I think, Matt, you and I were talking about this, and that, like, if you want to grow and you have to give something up in order to grow, that's not really a sacrifice, because, like, oh, well, if I want to work out at the gym and I have to give up my time playing video games to go to the gym, well, that's it's a sacrifice I'm willing to make, let's say. It's not like I'm not giving up my arm in order to do it. I'm just changing my priorities on this. But there are times where you have to really sacrifice your belief system, where you have to really adjust what you've known for your entire life. And the question I have for you guys is that a sacrifice, or is that is it just another kind of system of changing your priorities? Because, beliefs are deeply held. We said at the beginning, they're intrinsic. They're something that is at your core. So let's discuss it. Shaun, Mr. Zuber, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think it's the best way to put this. As humans, as people, we try to evolve too, right? So I think a lot of that, our belief system changes where when things happen in our lives, when we're wanting different outcomes, when we're realizing in a reflection that the things we're doing weren't making us happy, weren't making us fulfilled. There's triggers for these reasons, right? Or there's triggers for these things. So I feel like in order to evolve, sometimes you do have to, sacrifice always in general, but you may have to sacrifice your belief systems as well, or change or alter or evolve. I'm not saying kind of like what we're talking about before throughout the entire soup, but you might have to change the recipe up a bit.
I like it. Matt, thoughts on this?
I did have thoughts on this, but it kind of went blank. But I have a person who has experienced a sudden path shift in my life with a relationship. The person I was with, she turned out to be a total like negative, right? I won't get into the details, but it literally went from one day being together to the next day out of the house and having to do a total 360 180 on my life, so complete round and around and around, right? And the choice I made there to walk away from that relationship and everything that it involved and everything that grew from it was a really hard decision. But the belief that I had that if I stayed I would be destroyed uh, eventually, or I could lose that and grow and make myself better, that was one of the hardest things I ever did in my life. But I'm also looking back on it, and it's like one of the greatest things I've ever done. Not only did I learn how to drop a belief or something that's in my life, um, but I also discovered who I could be and who I wanted to be, and I kept on moving forward from that moment. So yeah, it's still a work in progress, and I think that's what half of life is a work in progress, right? There's old phrase, I forget who it was, but it's I want to show up to my grave in love, half drunk and full of life, right? um and that's how I'm kind of living the things right now. I've got so much that I want to give and do, and I'm acting like a 22-year-old because I can now, right? I haven't stopped living, and but that's my belief now versus what it was 5 years ago when I was in a situation that was slowly killing me. I think having that realization and that huge flip was something vital that's I would never give up, even though it was so painful that it's still scarred me now. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Rich, thoughts on this at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Matt's share with us about having something that was traumatic and horrible in his life that he was losing himself in, and the negative relationship that he had, and I mean not just the physical relationship, but the relationship he had in his mind with what was going on. Um, Sometimes we see those negative things and they overwhelm us, and we think there's no way I can get out of this. And I think a lot of what we need to be able to do, and I'm doing this right now, is looking at where I am and saying, is it where I want to be? Is this who I want to be? Is this accomplishing the goals I have set for myself? Does this match my belief system? And that seems really negative. You're like, oh, I'm not where I'm wanting to be. I'm not, as happy as I want to be. I'm not doing the things that I want to do. And those are, like I said, negative. But you need to be able to take that negative and realize that you can derive a positive out of that by saying, that's I know what I don't want in my life. So I'm going to now shift tack. I'm going to say, this is not what I want. And then sometimes jump into that ice cold bath and toss that soup out and start again. This is my new goal. This is my new belief system that I've adjusted to make sure that I don't end up in the same painful situation that I was in. So it's taking that negative and then rephrasing it inside your own head, inside your own belief system, as to be a positive. As painful as the past was, I'm going to use it to remind myself of where I don't want to end up in the future.
Absolutely. Mr. Taylor, any nuggets to add on to this?
Yeah, sure, I'll give it a go. I think that if you're If you're changing your belief system to a degree where it's notable, then that's either a good thing or a bad thing, as determined by the choice you make. So we all know that you can go in the way of the Jedi Knight, or you can go in the direction of Darth Vader. But you're the only one who gets to choose that. The world doesn't choose it for you. You're the one who chooses it for you. And so you've got to choose wisely. And by choosing wisely, that change in belief system is a good thing. And every time that you can improve your belief system by making good choices, and again, you're the only one who can do it, well, congratulations, you're winning in life, baby.
I like that. Congratulations. Now, this goes directly into what I want to talk about next. And we got a comment. Angela jumped on here. Said, changing core beliefs for growth can be exhausting, and it's easy to revert to old habits. What techniques do you use to stay the course? I make checklists, looking for other ideas. And this is a great question. I was going to ask something similar. Is that, a lot of the youth today. This is one of the comments we made yesterday, don't know how to sit with themselves. They don't know what they believe. They don't have the concept of like, who they are at their core. And I think it's in a similar way. If you need to change your core or you need to build your own core beliefs, I think it's a similar manner. So I was going to ask you guys, how do you do that? How do you personally change the course of your life, or how have you in the past, et cetera, et cetera? Because all these ideas are good for anybody. I'm going to start with Rich. What do you think?
Okay, when you're doing that and you're changing your core beliefs and you want to grow and you want to move forward, I think you need to sort of make a list, like Angela said, of all the things that you don't want, all the reasons why you're changing your belief system. Write them down. Physically, actually write them down. You may have to write them down 100 times. Is this actually the things I don't want in my life? All these things I want to avoid. And then what you can do is you can steer your path around those things when you see them. And sometimes you can do it by yourself. I mean, by sitting quietly. I mean, Seb says it all the time in all of his chats. Go in nature, sit, ground yourself. Just be part of the universe, and things will become clear. And I believe that, and that's one of the reasons why when we take veterans out into the wilderness to help them walk through their own path for their own journey for PTSD or whatever it is, we do it in nature, because you're out there. You have no more community inputs, really. You have no more stress. You have no more anything. It's just you, nature, and like-minded people. And it gives you the opportunity to sort of reset internally and start taking, making a list internally of the things that are important to you and the things that are not important to you. And those things you need to be able to put in a box, set down, and then walk away from them. And be able to, as you're walking forward, just, keep those things in mind. These are the things I don't want in my life. I'm going to avoid them. I'm going to avoid negative people. I'm going to avoid people that don't share my common goals. I'm going to avoid things that are going to put me in a situation that I don't want to be in. And if you have to keep referring to that list every morning when you get up and you read through that list and you're like, those are the things I'm avoiding today, that's a great place to start.
That is a great place to start. Mr. Zuber, thoughts on this?
Yeah, so when it comes to, just to kind of revert back a little bit to what I mentioned before, momentum, I think that is one of the best ways to create those good habits and not go back to the old. So one of the things that I used to do horribly wrong, in my opinion, for myself anyways, so just as reflection, is I would yo-yo with my weight. I would yo-yo with my activity. I would yo-yo with my work ethic, because I'd get inspired and then uninspired, and I'd make money and then I'd be bankrupt. Like, it's just this all over the map kind of thing, right? So over the time, it becomes difficult to also not revert back to those old habits, because we picture ourselves at our peak, and when we're not at our peak, we are almost like disgusted by who we are at this time and moment, right? So what we do is, and what I used to do is like, I'll give you an example. 2 years ago, I was like 240 pounds. Whereas when I fought MMA, I was 190 shredded. So you can see a massive, and there was no muscle gain, let's just put it that way. So it was a massive amount of weight gained. And then when I wanted to get back to working out and training again, my mentality is like, I was still that, professional fighter. So I created this list and this schedule, and I'm working out twice a day and I'm doing all this other stuff. And then I realized I'm eating perfect. And I realized like, I burned out in like an hour and a half, didn't even make it to day 2. Right. And the reality is I just picture myself what I was before. And when I couldn't do that, it was like this, forget it. Then the excuses came. I don't really need to do that. Who am I trying to impress? Why am I trying to do this? Et cetera, et cetera. So instead, like what I realized is, and I think somebody mentioned it yesterday, and Seb's talked about it numerous times, is just take that one step forward, use that momentum. So, and it's crazy how quickly these habits, these positive things start piling on top of each other. So a year and a half ago, I was 235. I'm like, I'm going to run a marathon in 2 months. I ran every single day, but I started at 5 kilometers and I was barfing my guts out at 5K on the treadmill. Right. And just to give you an example, a year and a half later, I'm running 100K ultra marathons, but it's not the 2 days, it's the 1.5 years of accumulative. But if I just tried to train the 100-kilometer marathon training schedule at the beginning, we get burnt out, we automatically quit. Right. So really creating habits piece by piece, not piling them all on, right, and adding on from there, I think is huge. Something I would recommend.
Yeah, totally agree. Matt, you got any thoughts on this one?
Yeah. 2 points. I'm agreeing with Shaun, right? We're building those habits step by step, and maintaining those habits are key to making, positive growth and stuff. Just one sec. But I also believe that you can't punish yourself when you have those backsteps. And I think that's the biggest fault that a lot of people fall into. You haven't worked out, like you worked out one day and you're like, oh, I can't do 2 workouts. I'm punished. Oh, I could quit. I'm done. Right. That's no, you kept on going. You changed your beliefs, you changed your strategy, and you moved on, keeping moving forward. Right. That's the key thing. I see a lot of people who say, oh, I'm going to do change. Oh, New Year's resolution, I'm not going to drink. And then a week later, it's like, oh, I had a beer. Well, I'm done. I just going to start drinking the rest of the week. Right. No, like, yeah, you have setbacks. What are setbacks? Lessons, right? Learn from those, grow from those, develop, move forward, right? What's the phrase that we've always learned in the military? Contact, or the plan doesn't survive first contact, right? First contact is the second you make a decision. I made a decision on this. The next minute it's being challenged, and it keeps on getting challenged until that habit is now your life, your belief, your perception of reality, right? And then towards Angela's question, I am a huge journalist. You know that. Not a journalist, but I write journals constantly, right? But every year I do put down an anti-vision of what I don't want to be, right? So, and that goes right to Steve's point. I write what I don't want to happen throughout this year. I don't want to be overweight. I don't want to be poor. I don't want this. And so every once in a while, when I need a kick in my ass, I look at that and I was like, you know what? I'm kind of on path. I'm not there. I am not 260 pounds. I am doing okay financially. Like it's a good reminder of that. Here's my high negative limit, and I haven't even reached that. I'm doing good, right? So I'm not punishing myself for getting up to 240 when I know I want to be 220. It's like, I'm not 260. I'm doing good here, right? So I do write things down. It is a good visual reminder, a good mental reminder, and it allows you to get it out of your brain, where again, we know our brains are not always the perfect things in the world, and gets it somewhere where it's actually physical and you can review 365 days later and like, yeah, no, I'm on path, man. I'm doing good.
Yeah. There's a there's this thought that keeps coming up in my head, and I'm loving this. But I don't know if you guys are like me in this regard, but I like to have stuff just in case, right? I have a box full of cables that I don't use, but I have them just in case I need them, right? And for many years, this box started to accumulate with stuff like that, of cables and plugins and all these things for different phones that I don't have anymore, and all these things. And I think this is it's a great allegory to what we're talking about, is that if I were just to take that whole box and toss it, that would be a shock to the system. That would be like a good hit, right? And I would feel all kinds of things about it. And well, now I don't have the cords and I have no cables. But if I take out one, and I throw it in the garbage, one that I don't need for, and I don't even have the phone for anymore. Nothing actually has that cable. Out it goes. Then it's gone. And you can slowly work through that box to a point that you have all the stuff that you need. Mr. Taylor, any thoughts on this? See if he's with us. Okay, we're gonna bypass him. We're getting kind of short on time here, so I'm gonna get some final thoughts from you guys because this has been a fantastic conversation. First off, I just want to say thank you, Matt, Rich, Shaun, other Shaun. Thank you guys. Really, it's been awesome. I really love the fact that we were able to flesh out the conversation from yesterday. This has been awesome, and we talked about soup quite a bit, which is a good way to connect the two, and I really enjoyed it. So let's start at the top here, Mr. Zuber. Final thoughts on anything we've gone over from either yesterday or today?
Yeah, I think I would just note that your belief can change, how you believe in yourself can change. Most of these are done, and Shaun said it right, every single day you basically restart your day and you have the chance to start anew. So I think really understanding and asking yourself those whys and why you're doing certain things is probably one of the most important things for me, is to really have that self-reflection in place. Because those, like Shaun said, those beliefs are yours and nobody else's. And so you're the only one that have the right to change those. And so if your belief or believes or what you believe, is what determines your outcome or your destiny or the things that you're going to be doing in life or whatever it may be, it's incredibly powerful to be able to control that. So I feel, doing whatever you possibly can to nurture that, have the right people around you, create that positive mindset, have that conversation, understand that those thoughts, those belief systems can take you just as, spiraling just as downward as they can take you to the atmosphere. You know what I mean? I think it's a pretty powerful thing to keep in check and just notice and be aware of. And one last thing, when it came to the checklists and things like that, one thing I also like to do, and it's a little bit off topic, but I love to punish and reward. And the punishment isn't usually anything super negative. It's like I don't get a cheat meal or something like that, right? But one of the things for myself, just because I am naturally a very competitive kind of person, good and or bad, I like to have something attainable that I'm working towards. It really gives me more motivation to do those daily activities and those things and to add to it all the time. So having, if you're a runner, if you're doing this or you're working out, do a contest, do whatever. Like, I don't do it to win it. I do it to do it and have something to move forward to. But anyways, that's all I got. Thanks.
Yeah, no, that's great. Competitions as a way of keeping yourself on track is a great idea. Rich, final thoughts?
Yeah, I think, sorry, I think as you're looking at your belief system and you've maybe you've restructured it or you've reaffirmed what you're doing as you're walking along your own path, I think you have to make sure that you're creating goals for yourself that are actually attainable, that you're not saying, like Shaun was saying, like you're not going to run that 100 ultra right away. You're going to do 5K, then you're going to do 10K, then you're going to do maybe 10K again, then you're going to do 15K. You're going to get over that 25K hump, and then you sort of build on it slowly in a way that you can actually accomplish your goals. Keep pushing yourself, but make them reasonable. And while you're doing that, don't be afraid to fail. I used to tell my subordinates all the time when I was in the military, if you're not making one mistake a day, you're not learning. You're not growing. Just don't make the same mistake twice. So give yourself that guardrail of, I made a mistake. I'm now going to learn from that mistake. I'm not going to do that again. And I'm going to alter my path to get to my goal. So I think being able to keep yourself on track or have a network of people who can help you keep yourself on track is super important, to make sure you keep checking in, making sure you're still trying to accomplish the same goal.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt, final thoughts?
I think it is a conversation that been going on all week long. Honestly, it's something that's so depth and so involved on everybody. Doesn't matter what your experience, military, police, firefighter, not military, police, firefighter, right? It's something that impacts everybody. And I think, and going with yesterday's conversation too as well, the I think Sarah said it something about, it was micro impressions where social media is impacting and stuff like that. And I think people really need to sit down and actually focus on their core beliefs and then be able to accept what's coming in from all angles, right? And be able to judge everything and not just do a rapid belief. And that's my path now. Oh, that's my path now, right? We kind of do see it in society right now, where it's trendy to follow this path or follow this thing that's happening right now. But what's your core belief in that? Like, what do you really believe when you're following this path? And yeah, I believe that people need to start focusing on their beliefs so we can be better together.
Yep,
And you can do
absolutely.
that too.
Hey, no taking away my taglines here. I don't have much to do on the show. This is all I get. No, I'm gonna see if we can get Shaun here. Mr. Taylor, any final thoughts if you are still with us? Probably not. Okay. I'm just going to shut her down then for the afternoon. I really, again, do appreciate the conversation. I think this has been really fantastic. Rich, you got something else? What do you got?
Yeah, it's not related to this, but I want to make a plug for the veteran hunters and say if anyone out there wants to come out on a hunt, wants to experience camaraderie and group think that's similar, toss us an email, look us up on Instagram or on the web, sign yourself up. Military police currently serving firefighters, first responders, paramedics. We'll take pretty much anybody. If you need support, you want to learn how to hunt, you want to do something as a team, you just want to be out there with like-minded people, look us up, give us a shout. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a great program. I've actually gone on a veteran hunters hunt once. Went for a black bear, took a shot, did not get it. It got. It's the only time I've ever wounded an animal too. That was a struggle in and of itself. And yeah, I cannot say enough. By all means, if you guys want to hunt, hook up with them. Other than that, it has just been a fantastic conversation, and I do believe I'm going to be extending this into the week anyway. So this is going to be a deep conversation that we're going to touch on for the next while. With that, I don't have a whole lot to add other than I would say learn, build, grow. Every day, you can do that with us here on The Collective. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Chimo.